Let's turn our attention to the shooting at a Columbia, South Carolina mall where the police says 12 people were injured and 3 people have been detained. Columbia Police Chief William Holbrook says there were no fatalities reported from the shooting. Of those injured, 10 received gunshot wounds, with 8 who were transported for treatment and 2 who were self-transporting for care. 9 of the 12 people who were injured in the shooting have been released from the hospital. And let's get more insight. Habib Salawu, International Affairs Analyst, joins me live in the studio. Good to have you join us, Habib.
Thank you for having me.
So we are coming from, or the U.S. is coming from a point where there was an attack in the mall in New York, so a subway a train in New York.
Yes.
And then just this week, there has been an attack in the mall in South Carolina.
Yeah.
What does this say about the current situation in terms of guns in the U.S.?
So it still comes back to the major concern on access to guns and how the system that assesses people's capability to possess arms is still very lax. There's always a political twist to it whenever you're talking about, gun controls. But in the U.S. now, I mean, the one that happened in New York City, you're not permitted to hold guns in New York City. And to think that someone could get a gun and come on the subway basically shows that they have to tighten the noose around access to guns.
But we understand that he was, from what his lawyer said, who is, that means I'm talking about the suspect in this South Carolina shooting, that it was an act of self-defense, that he was being shot at, and then he was defending himself. Again, doesn't that sort of quash the argument where people gun lovers say America needs more guns to protect, if you want to protect yourself, then everyone needs to be armed? We see that same argument here in the country.
Yes, you see, I mean, recently Georgia, came up with this law that allows people to carry guns. The thing with possessing guns is that there's always this underlying fear that people have, and then because there is a gun, they want to become confrontational. So many cases that people refer to things as provocation or, trying to defend themselves, it's pretty much because they have guns with them. And then there's that trigger that, I can always fight and defend myself. The police are doing a good job. Probably they can do a lot better, but there has to be a system that checks your mental capacity, looks at your criminal records, looks at, your anger management issues and the rest. Road rage, we've seen what guns have done with regards to road rage in America. So it has to go beyond just the mere rhetoric of, putting in the news every time it happens, and the long list of casualty keeps increasing. There's really nothing being done to deal with it.
And bipartisanship is the problem here, because I understand that President Biden last week came up with regulations that would lead to tougher gun restrictions and all of that. But there is a movement in some Republican states to make owning guns even easier for people without even background checks.
Yes.
Now, if this happens in most Republican states, in the coming years, in the coming months, how bad do you think that these attacks and shootings would be in the U.S.?
I live in a Republican state and I have kids, and sometimes we go out to certain places and you can see me trying to assess around to see if there's some berserk person trying to do anything. It's politics, and then also there's, Americans have this fear of, being overthrown. You've seen how they react to things like anything suggesting that the government could be, in a situation where external forces after 9/11, and so the NRA is a very strong association, and they put a lot of lobbyists in Washington to fight for the continuous access and proliferation of arms in the U.S. as the case moves. I mean, you come across people who have 16 guns. Is that self-defense? That's not.
Absolutely. And just quickly, when you said it's politics, but lives are also being lost every day. We understand that in America alone, there are about 52 attacks every day just in America. How do you move past the politics of securing lives?
So the thing is, we need both parties to come and look at what the major concern is, which is, like you said, how do we preserve the life of Americans in the U.S., as opposed to saying that one party is trying to take away guns. Whenever that comes into the conversation about one party trying to take away guns, the resistance increases. So there has to be a way where, you know, it's basically looking at the picture holistically and saying, we need to stop these senseless killings. It has happened in clubs, malls, schools. I mean, where else can you possibly feel safe? Now on the train, probably on the public bus sometime.
So it's more of a safety issue,
yes,
and not a gun control issue. It's more of a security issue, not necessarily a gun control or rights issue.
So the moment it suggests that they want to take away guns, then rights come into play. But when we look at it from the safety angle, the number of lives that have been lost, then the level of sanity that you would expect from both parties and people and their bases still comes into play. Because now it's more of rights. Like, you cannot take away my gun. But we're not saying we want to take away your gun, but we want to ensure guns stay in the right hands.
All right, thank you so much for talking to us, International Affairs Analyst Habib Salau.
Thank you for having me.